Have you ever agreed to pretend to be someone's husband for just one dinner, thinking it would end after a few awkward hours, only to discover that your presence would heal a family that had been quietly falling apart for years? Sometimes life places you in strange situations that make no sense at first. Sometimes one simple act of kindness becomes the answer to a prayer you never knew someone was whispering. And sometimes the people who ask for your help end up changing your own life forever. Before we begin, welcome to Kindness Story. If you enjoy heartwarming stories that remind us how one kind choice can change everything, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Your support helps us share more stories that bring hope to people everywhere. I wasn't looking for adventure that Tuesday evening. After finishing another long shift repairing heating systems, I stopped at a small grocery store to grab something easy for dinner. My boots were dusty, my shirt had a grease stain, and I just wanted to go home. As I reached for a loaf of bread, I noticed a young woman standing nearby. She looked nervous, checking her phone every few seconds. She finally took a deep breath, walked over to me, and asked the strangest question anyone had ever asked me. "Would you pretend to be my husband for dinner tonight?" I stared at her, convinced I had misunderstood. She quickly laughed, though her eyes were full of worry. "I know this sounds crazy. My name is Emily. My mother is very sick, and she believes I'll never find someone who truly loves me. She keeps asking to meet my husband. I don't want her final memories to be filled with disappointment." There was something honest about her voice. "I'm not asking for romance," she said softly. "Just kindness." Every sensible part of me wanted to walk away. But another part remembered sitting beside my own mother in the hospital years earlier, wishing someone would bring her one happy day before she passed away. I couldn't ignore that memory. I smiled. "Okay," I said. "One dinner." Emily looked like the weight of the world had just lifted from her shoulders. On the drive to her childhood home, she explained everything. Her father had passed away several years earlier. Since then, her mother, Margaret, had become weaker with every passing month. Emily had spent years caring for her instead of building her own life. "I've canceled dates, jobs, and dreams," she admitted. "I don't regret taking care of Mom. I just regret that she blames herself for my loneliness." When we arrived, the little white house was surrounded by colorful flowers. It wasn't fancy, but every corner showed love. Emily squeezed my hand before opening the front door. "You don't have to say much," she whispered. Inside, the smell of homemade chicken soup filled the house. An older woman slowly walked into the living room using a cane. The moment she saw me, tears filled her eyes. She smiled so warmly that I almost forgot we had just met. Then she said words that made both Emily and me freeze. "I knew she'd find you." Emily looked confused. "So you approve?" she asked carefully. Margaret laughed. "My daughter has always helped strangers. She gives away umbrellas when it rains. She buys groceries for elderly neighbors. She never leaves anyone behind." She looked directly at me. "I always believed kindness would bring the right man into her life." Those words stayed with me all evening. Dinner wasn't uncomfortable like I expected. Margaret told funny stories about Emily as a little girl. Emily rolled her eyes every time another embarrassing childhood memory appeared. Soon we were all laughing so hard that I forgot this wasn't my family. After dinner, I noticed Margaret struggling to clear the table. Before anyone could ask, I quietly carried the dishes into the kitchen and began washing them. Emily looked surprised. "You don't have to do that." "I know," I smiled. "I want to." Margaret watched from the doorway with gentle eyes. "That's the difference," she whispered. Late that evening, Emily walked me to my truck. "I'm sorry for putting you in such an awkward situation. You don't have to apologize." She looked down. I wish tonight had been real. Neither of us knew what to say after that. A week later I couldn't stop thinking about their family. So I returned. Not because I had promised anything. Because kindness isn't supposed to end when it's convenient. Margaret welcomed me like I had never left. Over the following months, I visited every weekend. Sometimes I fixed broken cabinets. Sometimes I mowed the lawn. Sometimes I simply sat beside Margaret while Emily caught up on sleep she desperately needed. One afternoon I discovered the roof leaking above Margaret's bedroom. Without telling anyone, I called a few friends from work. The next Saturday, 6 of us arrived with tools and supplies. By sunset, the roof was completely repaired. Emily stood in the yard crying. "You didn't have to spend your weekend doing this." One of my friends smiled. "He told us your family once showed him kindness." Emily looked confused. "I've never met them." "No," he said. "But kindness always travels farther than we realize." Months passed. Margaret became weaker, but her smile never disappeared. One evening she asked me to sit beside her. She reached into a small wooden box and handed me an old wedding ring. It belonged to my husband. I gently tried giving it back. "I can't take this." She closed my hand around it. "I know the difference between pretending and becoming family." My eyes filled with tears. She smiled peacefully. "You came here because someone asked for one evening. But you stayed because your heart wouldn't let you leave." A few weeks later, Margaret passed away quietly with Emily holding one hand and me holding the other. The house felt painfully empty afterward. For days, Emily and I simply helped each other through the silence. We organized old photographs, donated clothes, and shared memories Margaret had left behind. One afternoon we found a letter addressed to both of us. Inside, Margaret had written, "If you're reading this together, then my greatest prayer came true. Love built on kindness lasts longer than love built on excitement. Never stop choosing each other." Neither of us spoke for several minutes. Finally, Emily smiled through her tears. "So, what happens now?" I laughed softly. "This time, maybe we stop pretending." A year later we stood in a small country church surrounded by friends, neighbors, and the people whose lives Margaret had quietly touched. There was no pretending. No acting. Only gratitude. As I slipped a ring onto Emily's finger, I looked toward the empty seat where her mother would have been. In my heart, I could almost hear her gentle voice. "I knew she'd find you." Looking back, I still smile at the impossible question that changed my life. Sometimes kindness begins with a favor that feels awkward. Sometimes it starts with saying yes when every logical reason says no. You never know whose burden will become lighter because you showed up with compassion instead of judgment. One evening of kindness became a lifetime of love, friendship, and family. And maybe that's the greatest reminder of all, that the smallest act of kindness can become the beginning of someone else's miracle. If this story touched your heart, remember to carry kindness with you wherever you go. A smile, a helping hand, or simply showing up for someone can change a life forever. And when we choose kindness without expecting anything in return, we often discover that the greatest gift comes back to us in ways we never imagined. Until next time, keep spreading kindness, because the world will always need more of it.